Let's pick up a few things here. The US Federal Reserve tonight makes an interest rate decision in the face of the banking crisis. Many have called for rates to be put on hold until the crisis settles. Independent economist and a consultant of the small business lender Judo Bank, Warren Hogan, joins me now. Warren, the Fed tonight, what should it do?
I think they're going to have to go 25. I think they're going to have to stay resolute in the fight against inflation. I think Janet Yellen overnight made it quite clear that they are ring-fencing policy. Interest rates to fight inflation, other tools to deal with the financial instability. Of course, the Europeans moved last week. So I think the Fed will need to stay the course. They will. I doubt they'll go 50, which was, I think, their original intention. And of course, everyone is going to be looking at the messaging.
Well, last week it was the European Central Bank that in the face of the crisis, Credit Suisse raised interest rates by 0.5%. The Fed, you say, 0.25% tonight. It then puts pressure on the Reserve Bank here in Australia, which universally is expected to keep interest rates flat, at least for the next month or so.
I think the case is a lot weaker here to pause. I mean, I know they talked about a pause, but I think if we go back 2 weeks, most economists expect them to go one more time and then pause. Get that cash rate up near 4, 385, then do the pause. The RBA doesn't want to pause for a month, then hike again a month later. They want to pause for a few months. They need to get that rate to a level where they think they can sit back for at least 3 months. I think that's 385. And of course, these problems are not really affecting our financial system. And of course, our economy is proving to be quite resilient.
And just explain something else, because ahead of that interest rate decision, this RBA review that we talked about earlier is likely to be handed to the Treasurer. So there's going to be some sense as to what the Reserve Bank looks like in the future, what it might be targeting differently, how it makes its decisions about interest rates. So these are all key things that the Reserve Bank might also have to consider as it's even going towards making this interest rate decision.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I'm sure there'll be some insights by the time of the April board meeting. Whether it affects that decision, again, you know, given that there'll be a lot of talk about the review and the government's going to make it public before the budget, get that last rate hike out of the way, then they can sit back for a few months. It adds to the case to go in April, in my opinion. That's assuming everything settles down. I mean, we've had 2 good trading sessions. Things look like they have settled. The US authorities look they have the banking system under control at this stage, but things could change very quickly. And of course, the RBA meeting is not for another couple of weeks.
OK, but there's one other aspect of this. If Australia's banks, as we are told by everybody, are sound, everything is safe, and we've got no reason to disbelieve that, in that case, if things are normal here, the Reserve Bank should make normal interest rate decisions. As you point out, if that means going the ongoing fight against inflation, there's no reason not to do it. There's no reason to pause and look at what happens around the world, because broadly, even what's happening around the world right now is not going to have a significant impact on Australia's banking system.
It seems contained. I mean, the Credit Suisse issue really is an institution-specific issue. Yes, there's this problem with second-tier banks in the US, but the authorities are moving quickly there. But I think the other thing is we're now in a new stage of the tightening cycle where instability is now really starting to emerge.
But that's what's supposed to happen when you raise interest rates as aggressively as you have.
Yeah.
That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to change behaviour. And yes, the pressures of those rate rises are going to squeeze some weaker players out.
And I think we're actually still at the beginning of that process. I think there's going to be a lot more financial instability, a lot more events in the months, 6 months ahead, while these central banks still have to, they may pause, but they're not cutting. That's for sure. And I think the Europeans showed that. And I think this is why the Fed is so important tonight. You know, given how far money markets and interest rate markets have rallied and implying rate cuts within months in both the US and Australia and other markets, the Fed's communications tonight are critical to really put to bed that idea that they're worried about this financial instability and that's going to change the course on their interest rate policy. No, they're focused on inflation. And I think the most important thing the Fed tomorrow is going to do is remind the market of that.
So, OK, so they raise interest rates to head off inflation in the United States. But at the same time, they kind of rescue the depositors in Signature Bank, Silicon Valley Bank, and it remains to be seen what happens to First Republic, though its share price did recover. So, you know, you can't ultimately save everybody, though. That's the point. The taxpayers can't step in and effectively underwrite every deposit in every bank account in America.
Well, they certainly can't, although that being said, there's lots of ways they can continue to provide liquidity to the banking system. They're acting aggressively because this is the banking system. This is actually a genuine concern over a run on second-tier banks. My view is that the financial distress we're going to see in the months ahead is going to be outside of the banking system. And we've already seen crypto, FTX, that sort of thing. I think we're going to see issues arise in other parts of the financial system, which they will not bail them out, and they will have no technique or tool to do that either.
So in other words, interest rates rise and so something else pops out there. Property developers, it could be. People who own office buildings in big capital cities could be another one as an obvious one to see. We know the construction industry is under pressure. So all these things are real.
Yep. And investors are going to be watching all of this. It's going to be a very edgy, volatile few months ahead. And the reality is that no one can be confident that this fight against inflation is won. In the United States, they were literally talking about upping the pace to 50s 2 weeks ago because the payrolls have bounced back in 2023. Inflation stopped falling at 5%. And here in Australia, we haven't even seen the turn in inflation. And we have no visibility of how far it's going to fall.